Good evening and welcome to Inside Government, a show brought to you by Cayuga Community College for the fall 2024 semester here that is shown on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, and Win 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Giannettino. Since our guest tonight last appeared, election 2024 is in the books. We're delighted to have in the studio the mayor of the City of Auburn, Jimmy Giannettino, who is about to finish his first year as mayor. Since he was last on, a lot has gone on, including when he was last here, we discussed the process for possibly picking a replacement to Jeff Dygert, the city manager who's going to leave at the end of June of 2025. And lo and behold, they have appointed Jenny Haines, the director of planning, in the last couple of weeks. So we'll talk a little bit about that process and how they went through the process and what her assignments will be. We'll also talk a little bit about last week's elections and how they might impact the City of Auburn, the status of several items, including letters that went out to residents that have raised some questions about what they're about, as well as talk maybe a little travelogue and the Auburn Downtown Holiday Parade. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. Let's get the preliminaries out.
Sure.
Election 24 is done. There are some House races, but nothing here, which is, I think, remarkable that in central New York, there's really nothing that's in question at this stage. There usually
everything
is.
Was pretty much done on election night this year, which is unusual.
Always the wait. So any surprises for you?
Yeah, I will say that I was surprised by the presidential election. I was surprised by that. But the results are the results, and Donald Trump will be the next president. And like any president, I wish him success, and I hope that we can all move forward and get some things done.
But locally in Cayuga County, I want to talk more central to here. Last year was a really good year for local Democrats.
Sure.
You took 7 of the 11 seats in the county legislature. Mm-hmm. You were elected as mayor. 2 other members of council. No Republicans won on the city council. You turned over the city clerk's position.
County clerk.
I'm sorry, yes. Chuck Mason is not leaving.
Chuck is still there.
Sorry, don't worry. No Freudian slips there. Numbers were not good this year for Democrats. What happened locally?
I think it was the presidential election that drove turnout. I think a number of people stayed home for whatever reasons. But, like I said, the results are the results, and we have to work together.
So one of the exceptions is John Mannion.
Yes.
He did well. Were you surprised by that?
No. John's a stand-up guy. John, he represented us for a time, and prior to representing us, he had lost 2 elections, and he kept showing up. He kept coming to Auburn, him and his wife both. They stayed relevant here. Then he represented us, and then there was redistricting. And he continued to reach out to try to work with us on things like water quality. So I think that the results for John show that he is a good representative for the people of Central New York, and the results spoke for themselves.
But the Trump wave did not pull Brandon Williams across.
No. And part of it probably has to do with voter registration in the districts.
Okay.
I'm sure that has something to do with it.
Well, and in one case, I don't know if it was really a surprise, but maybe the numbers were a surprise in the case of Ian Phillips, former Democratic Party chair, former president of the school board, lost against John Lamondes. Maybe the loss wasn't a surprise, though. He worked very hard. Were you surprised at the margins, though, on that one?
Yeah, again, I think that, part of it had to do with the way the district's drawn. Part of it had to do with the turnout by registered Republicans versus registered Democrats. I think another big component of it had to do with the amount of negative campaigning that Assemblyman Lamondes did. It's no secret, Ian's a friend of mine. He's helped me in my endeavor into local government. But I'll say this about Ian, I'm proud of the campaign he ran. He refused to go negative. He ran an above-board campaign. He walked the walk, and I'm proud of him for that. And you win some and you lose some, and I've talked to him multiple times since then, and he's proud of the campaign that he ran.
And then the other big win for Democrats, though, was Rachel May, the state senator. She will return. She'll represent all of Cayuga County, though Caleb Slater, who was a Cayuga grad, did win Cayuga County. Yeah. Were you surprised by that?
Again, no, because of the registration.
Just registration. So let's talk about when you left last time. We talked about the city manager, and then I read the newspaper the next morning, and you had talked to council about city manager. And when you left here that night, you said, listen, we're going to most likely do a search, but we're going to look internally first. That might squeeze the process down, and you would not name candidates when you were here. I'm not sure if you had a candidate in mind at that time. But why did you go the route you went as a council? Not just you, but all
so,
5 of you.
The 5 of us talked about it, and we drew upon the experience of the last time we were looking for city manager, and we did do a search. And all along, the perfect candidate was right in front of our faces and was serving as the interim city manager. I think, things in local government, not just in Auburn, but in local government across the state, are so complex, more complex than I think they ever have been, that if you have an internal candidate who is qualified, who you feel can address the issues at hand, that person should be looked at. And that's how we all felt about Jenny.
So Jenny Haines is the Director of Planning and Economic Development, who I think the world of, who joined the city when I was there a long, long time ago, is going to take over in July 1st. But some feedback has been, and a valid question, and when you do any of these searches, especially if you've picked an internal candidate the last time around, why not do a national search?
I'll be brutally honest with you. I felt the national search last time was a waste of time and resources.
And it's expensive.
It's expensive.
Time-consuming?
Time-consuming, and again...
And I think you have a great candidate.
Yeah, and we have somebody internally who has served the people of this city faithfully for over 30 years.
Were you surprised she put her name forward? That was the surprise for me.
Why were you surprised by that?
Because I didn't think she didn't do it the last time around.
Yeah, well, she was interested. I don't know if I was surprised. I'll tell you, I'm happy that she put her name forward. And
were there any other internal candidates?
I don't want to talk about that.
Well, either there were candidates. Did you go with only one single candidate, or did you consider others in the internal search? I think that is a valid question.
There was only one internal candidate that stepped up and said they were interested.
That's all right. Yeah. So she becomes assistant city manager on January 1st, correct?
Correct.
So I'm assuming when you did the budgeting, your thought was, well, we might not have an internal candidate, and we may need to have somebody trained for 6 months on that. Picking her didn't change that dynamic at all.
No, we budgeted for half a year for an assistant city manager, whether we went internal or external. We feel it's important, and that's one of the things that Jeff Dygert said to us when he let us know that he was going to retire, that we really need a period of several months to get that person up to speed. And yes, she works in the building, and she's familiar with most of the issues, but you've been involved in city government. The city manager, there's a lot on the city manager's plate, and we felt it was important, and Jeff felt it was important to give that person some time to work directly with the city manager.
And just 2 other quick questions on this one. She will obviously move up on roughly on January 1st to assistant city manager, then city manager. Where are you in the process for picking her successor? Because obviously she's going to leave planning and economic development.
Well, that'll be up to her and Jeff.
Okay, that is not a city council appointment.
They handle personnel issues, and they handle hiring, and we will, they always look to us and ask for our input, but ultimately it'll be up to them. We are in the very early stages of that process.
But you do expect that to occur roughly around January 1st as well?
I would hope so.
Okay. And there's a deputy director, Steve Selvik, who's been with the city at least 20 years, is in that position now as the assistant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I want to stick on economic development because we missed that the last time around, and frankly, we did not get it with Aileen McNabb-Coleman. She has other things on her plate.
She does.
Recently. We talked about taxes, and she's releasing her budget tonight, and we also talked about the building. The county pulled funding for the Cuba Economic Development Agency several months ago. Did the city, the city is not using any CEDA resources, correct?
No. So once CEDA disbanded, which happened several months ago, Auburn Industrial Development Authority, which fell under the umbrella of CEDA, obviously didn't have a director anymore.
Right.
So ADA has contracted out with a third party for a period of time.
Who is that?
MRB Group.
Okay.
And so MRB Group is overseeing ADA and running our meetings until we find out what the path forward is. Now, the path forward that has been proposed is replacing CETA with CCDC, Cuyahoga County Development Corporation, which really, for all intents and purposes, is the same type of organization that CETA was, but understanding the challenges that the county has in front of them with the county office building, with their budget, that's been delayed. So right now it's status quo. We are working in conjunction with the county. We are communicating
But is
constantly.
there a timeline where the city needs to see this come to a conclusion?
Yeah.
Because I know originally, let's just say shutting down the county office building, there was a timeline, and that was going to be most likely by May or June. We're now in November.
Yeah, so I think the biggest component of that timeline, to be fair to the county, is what they come up with for a budget and whether or not the funding is going to be there. If it's not, then I think what we'll have to look at, and I'm a member of ADA as the mayor, as is Councilor Cuddy, we'll have to look at and talk about bringing ADA back in-house if that's necessary.
So I ask that because there is a lot of, other than some stalled environmental issues with Micron, there's a window here for trying to attract Micron. So the original pre-CETA criticism of economic development was we have a great set of tools locally, but they're in a toolbox that is like a 3-year-old playroom. They're not all there. You've got to go find this Tinker toy or that Lego piece to put everything together. Have we reverted to that?
I don't think so. While we're not under the umbrella, there is constant and effective communication between.
So you don't think any economic development opportunities are going to slip by?
I don't think so. And if you look at what's been going on with ADA this year, Beaumere just announced that they're purchasing a facility on Allen Street. They're rehabbing that, and they're going to move their earth planner division down there, creating additional jobs. Builder's Choice has purchased a vacant property in Auburn, and they're looking to build a new facility there, and a spur off the railroad. So things are continuing to move along. We have a couple potential housing projects in the works as well. And again, we're communicating with the county on these things and with
So there
the
was
CCIDA.
Yeah, so there was what did you call the group? Not ACDC.
CCDC. CCDC.
CCDC. They did meet as a group at City Hall a couple of weeks ago. Was there a timeline for any action, or are they waiting for the county budget as well?
The budget's the biggest component in this for them, and that's understandable.
So let's talk about one other piece of economic development, quasi-economic development, is earlier this year the city tried to implement a separate hotel tax. First of all, for those who may not have tuned into the show when you were our guest a month and a half ago, what was the plan for the money and how much would it raise?
The plan for that money would be to supplement the general fund, and we were looking at probably $500,000 a year. Why did we feel the need to do that? And we've talked about this every time I've been on the show.
I know, but not everybody may pay attention.
And it's the lack of increase in AIM funding from the state of New York, aid and incentive to municipalities. It's basically revenue sharing. We're sending sales tax dollars and income tax money to Albany, and the plan under former Governor George Pataki was that there would be revenue sharing back to municipalities, and that would increase every year. It's been flat up until last year for
a blip.
Yeah, 16 years, the entire time that Mike Will was mayor.
Did it go down again in this year's budget?
We don't know yet. The state budget hasn't been released.
No. When you say it went up, is that
2024? It went up, but they've told us that was temporary.
So that's a 24-25 budget for the state?
Yes.
The current budget?
Yes, the current budget.
Okay.
So the effort now is to obviously put the pressure on the legislature to keep that money in there.
So of the $500,000, let's just use that round number. That may not be the exact number, but you were going to take half of that for one thing and roughly half of that for another.
No, it was all going to the general fund.
It was all so you were never. I thought there was a question about delegating some of the money to arts institutions, or was that the county?
That was the county.
Okay,
Yeah.
So it did not get through the legislature. So what happened? Your proposal. So the city sent a home rule message. to the legislature, and what usually happens is your local members of your delegation, if it's 1, 2, 3, well, it'll always be 2. Member of the Senate, member of the Assembly, it might be multiples,
right,
because Auburn's been divided up in the past. They then put legislation forward. It goes through usually in the doldrums of July, when they're finishing up all the non-budget things. They pass it, and it moves forward. That did not occur this time.
It did not. We had support from Senator May's office. We did not have support from Assemblyman Lamonta's office. He had a public hearing. He decided not to support it for Auburn. He supported it for other municipalities. I've made my frustration on that very clear. We've been told that Auburn's different than Skaneateles because he supported it for Skaneateles. I still don't have an answer as to why we're different than Skaneateles.
So go ahead.
If you look at what occurred, there were 2 people who showed up, 3 people who showed up to the meeting, 1 who does live in the city of Auburn, 1 who does not live in the city of Auburn, actually 2 who do not live in the city of Auburn. And the excuse we're getting is, well, the public was opposed to it, but he's never told us the messages that he's received to his office from the
Because he
public.
was here in the studio, and he said he received lots of communications, but those aren't foilable, I'm assuming.
I don't know if they're foilable or not. I know for a fact that there were people on city staff and in some of our local institutions that sent emails to his office in support of it.
So does this mean he just was reelected? We just talked about that about 10 minutes ago. Does this mean the idea is dead?
I would like to revisit the idea again this budget cycle.
Have you reached out to him or talked to him at
I have
all?
not.
So there is another route here. It's an unconventional route. So let me ask you this.
Sure.
The Assembly has a Democratic majority. I don't know if they have a super majority, because I don't know if all those districts were counted. You could go to the Speaker and ask for this home rule legislation to be done without your local representative, correct?
We could. I don't know that we'd gain any headway there. I would hope that the
So there are no
Assemblyman would
plans
listen.
to do that at this stage?
No, I mean, we know that we can do that. There are no formal plans to do that. I would hope that the Assemblyman would listen to us. We hear all the time that he's in the minority and he can't do anything for us. This is one thing he could do for us. And let's talk the politics of it. Here, he's endorsed by the Conservative Party. We're talking small government. You talk about overreach from state government telling us what we can and can't do locally. It's home rule. We should have his support to do it. He's supported other municipalities. That's the most frustrating thing of it is we talk about this desire for, in his party of small government. This is big government at its worst.
Well, they would reverse it and say that this is local government not being able to control their spending.
Well, then he
would make that
he
job.
could say that, but then he would have to make a case to public safety and DPW why we can't pay them. Because the reality is the state has failed time and time again to increase AIM funding to keep up with costs.
And by the way, there is a rule that goes back to 1979 that says you are supposed to get revenue sharing.
100%.
And it's been discontinued from the first Cuomo, not, there might have been a blip.
Correct.
During
And we can talk about several factors from the state. I just signed onto a letter through NICOM for arterial maintenance funding.
NICOM is?
New York Conference of Mayors. That has not increased since 1987. I think we're getting supplemented $150,000 a year for maintaining the arterial. If it had kept up with inflation and what they're asking for, it would be $500,000, and that would be significant. So, for the state to say that, we're not controlling spending, that's ridiculous. Anytime we've raised taxes in my time.
I know.
I'm making a case to the people, right? Because they should be calling their state representatives. Anytime we've raised taxes, it's been below the tax cap. We are staying within our means, and a tax cap that's below 2% when you had double-digit inflation for 2 years. So the argument just doesn't make sense.
So where people might be concerned is something got in the mail about 2 weeks ago. They got a form, a one-pager.
Yep.
It's a survey of individual properties. Why was it sent out?
So every 4 years, by local statute, we do a reevaluation of assessed property values, and that's coming up in 2026. So this is just the assessor's office preparing for that process.
Is this the first time they've sent those forms out?
That's a good question. I think it is because I don't remember getting that, but we do have a new assessor.
Okay.
Our previous assessor retired. So this is just, the form I received it's basically asking, is this correct? Is this correct? So it's giving you a chance to make your case too as they're starting this process.
So a lot of little permutations here. Let's deal with the first one, and that is, are properties assessed only on their outside value and square footage, or do you get into interior conditions as well?
Well, we don't go inside when we're doing a re-eval, but if you take out a permit to do work in your house, that obviously goes into the formula.
So you do have a new assessor. Will this, in 2026, will this be done internally, or are you hiring a firm, or you have not made that decision
No,
yet?
this is usually done internally.
Internally.
And this is...
But you do add resources. You have to, it can't be done by current staff alone, is it?
No, I'm pretty sure the current staff will do it.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there any penalty for not sending the form back?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And so the reverse, and going back to the hotel tax and everything else, everyone thinks that when there's a reval, everybody's taxes are going up. Go ahead, make the case.
That's not always the case. Other municipalities in the area have gone decades without reassessing.
In Cuyahoga County.
In Cuyahoga County, I think Fleming was probably one of the ones that raised the most eyebrows when they finally did reassess.
I think the last time they did it was 1776. Yeah.
So the case for reassessing or re-evaluating every 4 years is that it stays with the market. And if you look at the property transfers in the paper, and this current re-eval is only 2 years old, I'm seeing houses that are selling for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 higher than what they're assessed at. This re-eval is to try to balance everything out. There was a point early on when I was involved in local government where all the property values downtown were very low, but if you had sold your house, your property value was high. And obviously we know what's gone on downtown. There's been a lot of investment downtown. So that re-eval brings all the property values back into line. When you have commercial buildings on Grand Ave selling for $2 and $3 million, you want them to be assessed at that value so that homeowners aren't subsidizing the tax rate for them.
So it may not necessarily mean your taxes go up, but there are some local governments who have used the reval to say, well, we've kept taxes low, but the pot has increased. Sure. They're still taking more
I would
money
rather
in.
have my house assessed for what it's worth and pay a lower tax rate per thousand than to pay a higher tax rate and have my property value assessed low, because if I want to sell it, I want to get fair market value.
And if
for
somebody
it.
doesn't agree with or when they get their letter in, sometime in 2026, there is an assessment review board that's appointed by the mayor.
Yes.
That hears these cases and
you have an opportunity to bring in comparable properties to make your case. And I know that that board is they're very good at listening to what people's arguments are and taking those comparables into consideration.
And as we all know, because I used to take tours of school children with their teachers to the third floor where the assessors is, and they would all say, "What's the assessor?" And you can't explain to a 7-year-old what an assessor is, but I could tell them this one thing: that office determines the price of somebody's house, and every parent never agrees with that number because it's always too high until they want to sell it.
100%.
And then it's too low.
100%.
And so only the adults in the room in the hallway got that.
And I understand, when people get a letter like that in the mail, that obviously they're concerned, but this is part of the normal process. We do it every 4 years, and we have, I'm assuming back to the time you were in office.
We implemented the idea of going to a cycle because it did get so far out of whack. There is some benefit to that. It's the case you're making that at some point you do have things that over time neighborhoods change, things shift. Sure. If you're not doing this on a regular basis, then it only becomes worse in the long term. And by the way, it's worse not only for you in the city, but you've got school districts involved, you've got the Seymour Library District involved, you've got the county involved. It distorts the whole thing.
Sure does.
Oh, I get it. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
That's your job.
I'm on his side this week. Speaking of the devil, this is a horrible segue. Those who pay attention to you on Facebook, I do not have Facebook, as you know, but I'm a lurker on somebody's account in my house. You recently took a family trip, and I normally we don't talk about family trips here, but you went to someplace in Bourne. Where did you start off with, and who'd you go with, if you don't mind us asking?
No, not at all. So I took a family trip with my parents and my sister to Germany, Augsburg, Germany, which is a little northwest of Munich. The reason we went there is my uncle lives there. He worked for the Commerce Department many years ago. He's since retired, but he married somebody from Germany, and they have children together. So we went to visit them.
So where the devil reference, kind of, you went to Dachau, a concentration camp. So first of all, why did you go? Why did you go first?
Well, I think that, that's an important part of world history, human history, that we can't forget. Obviously, those who suffered at the hands of Nazi Germany, that generation is slowly disappearing, I guess quickly disappearing now, right? Most in their 90s. And it's a story that I think is important to keep alive. I will say that the German government has done a phenomenal job of telling the story of what happened there. It was a very moving and powerful experience. I'm glad that we went.
What did you take away from what you saw? I mean, there's a visual. I know others who I've never been lucky enough to go visit to see it, read a lot about it, but what was the visual impact for you?
I just, Guy, I question how and why human beings can be just be so terrible to one another. I really just don't have words for what I saw, other than it was very emotionally moving.
Highly recommend Defiance. I'm rereading that now. That's why when I saw those photos, I picked it off a bookshelf and started reading that. I know it was a Daniel Craig movie, which more people are interested, but the book does ask that question.
Sure.
Why?
And and I think throughout history, no matter what country you're talking about, humans have always gone after marginalized populations, and I would hope that in 2024 we're better and that we've learned from that. So for me personally, and as we talked a little bit before the interview, at one time I was teaching American history and government. When I was in grad school, I did take some courses in world history. So for me, it was kind of coming full circle on that.
I want to talk a little bit of Wasco Lake. I don't want to go retread what we talked about with Councilor Cuddy on Tuesday or Dr. Affler last week. I want to talk about the lawsuit. You are suing, I'm going to summarize it real quickly. City is suing the state because they're not implementing some changes that you have asked for. Where does that suit sit right now?
It's currently in the legal process. I actually had a meeting with our attorneys from Earth Justice yesterday afternoon. They're moving forward with everything. It's just going through that legal process. When do you think it will get to a judge? I'm hoping sometime early 2025.
So
as you know, it has been moved from Keuka County to Albany County, so there was that delay.
Is that good or bad?
I don't know.
Does somebody else get a home court advantage?
I think we could have the home court advantage there, honestly. Hopefully, the judge in Albany is familiar with the way things work in the bureaucracy in Albany and is as frustrated as we are.
So I want to ask you in the last minute or two we have, lawsuits are usually a last resort. Is this the last resort on this front?
I think on the rules and regs, yes, that is the last resort. As far as the lake as a whole, I don't think it's the last resort. We've got to keep fighting for what's required.
So usually when you sue the state, there is always a worry of a political backlash. Does the city have any concern? I know you have other plans that are not contingent upon the watershed.
Sure.
But do you worry about other backlash from funding agencies or the governor because you're suing them on this particular subject?
I don't know how Councilor Cuddy answered this question, if you asked it.
I did.
Okay, because I haven't watched that interview yet. But we say this all the time. Hopefully, the governor or the governor's appointees will be adults and understand that this is not personal. Myself, Councilor Cuddy, the members of council, we are responsible to only the people of Auburn. And the people of Auburn are concerned about their drinking water, as they should be. The people of Owasco and Fleming are not only concerned about their drinking water, they're concerned about their property values. The local brewers are concerned about their ability to do business. So I hope that the governor or any agency commissioners don't take this personal, because it's not.
So have you talked to the governor at all about this?
I have not.
But you have reached out to her.
We have.
Two local representatives. You obviously have Rachel May in the Senate. What is she telling you on this particular subject?
You know, she's as frustrated as we are.
Okay.
She has been a staunch advocate for the protection of Owasco Lake. You know, as far as the rules and regs go, there's really not much that her or Assemblyman Lamondas could do because now we're involved in litigation. But I know that the senator is continuing to push the clean water fight for us.
And has Assemblyman Lamondas chimed in on this?
Not to us personally. I know that he said more research is needed. I would disagree with him on that immensely. We know what the problem is. As we sit here and continue to debate the right thing to do, if we just follow the law, it will fix the problem.
Our guest has been the mayor of the City of Auburn, Jimmy Giannettino. We didn't even get to the holiday parade. It's on the 30th of the month downtown. You'll be leading that officially for the first time. I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Hope you'll be back in February when we restart the semester.
Absolutely.
We had hoped to bring you in a few minutes Auburn Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Misty Slavic. Unfortunately, she cannot give us a district update. She is testifying on behalf of the district at a court hearing. So we're trying to work with a schedule with her, and we will bring her on as soon as we can. On Tuesday, we will be back for the last set of shows for the 2024 fall semester here. We're going to have a discussion about WIC, which is the Women in Infants and Children's Program. It's celebrating its 50th anniversary. Deanna Ryan will be here from the Cuyahoga County Health Department, and new WIC Director Tracy McMullen to give us an update about WIC. We'll also give you an update on another campaign, not a political one, the United Way campaign. Their executive director, Catherine Dennis, will be here to talk about where they are in the campaign. You can send us ideas for questions for any of those guests at cozguytho@aol.com. Or as we look towards the spring, if you have ideas for guests that we should bring on, please send us an email there as well. Again, cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. Thank you for watching. We will see you back here in the studio on Tuesday. So have a great weekend, an enjoyable weekend, and get your leaves raked.